the integumentary system, chiefly hair and nails, and then we'll get into some pathology of the skin. Now, much like your surface layer of your epidermis, the stratum corneum, your hair is simply made up of compacted, dead keratinocytes. And depending on how compacted it is and how fast it may grow, we can categorize your hair into two principal categories: vellus hair and terminus hair. Vellus hair being much of the short, fine hairs that grow over the surface of your body. And chiefly the hairs on your arms are a great example of your vellus hair. Now, your eyelashes are some of those that may, in fact, be a gray area that you may think may be one or the other, but it is, in fact, still considered vellus hair. But the other hair that you have on your body, your scalp, your eyebrows, and yes, in last hour, someone asked about armpit hair. Yes, that's also terminal hair, as well as pubic hair. That's the terminal hair, hard, large, coarse, pigmented. But even though we have these different varieties of hair, they're still built and composed the same way. They all start in a hair follicle, and we'll go through those in just a bit. Now, while in our evolutionary past, the hair that covered much of a human's body was for insulation, we kind of have lost that. We don't need that anymore. Because we can build fires, we can put on more clothes, we can go inside a home that's heated. But our hairs still, in fact, do serve a tactile function. In addition to the pressure we could feel on our skin, I think you can even realize a slight breeze moving the hairs on your arm. It's an added and amplified sensation. So hairs, by and large, are for tactile sensation, and our terminal hair that we have on our scalp, that we have for our eyebrows, that we have for our eyelashes, that's more for cosmetic reasons. Just like you might see the plumage on birds. So that's really the purposes that our hair serves for us today. And the physiology is just going to be a tactile sensation. Now, before you start writing this down, I know I got a lot of writers here. Let's look at the picture and then we'll come back to this, okay? This is our hair follicle. And the thing I want you to appreciate about a hair follicle, and we can see our epidermal layer here, corneum, lucidum in this region, granulosal that they make darker, spinosum, and basal. A hair follicle, I want you to envision, if you took a hair, much like a needle, a blunt-ended rod, and you just projected it and pushed it down into the skin, your epidermis would invaginate. It would get pushed down into a little pocket. Well, that's essentially what the hair follicle is. And you can follow the stratum basal. Do you see this bottom layer, the basal, where I'm pointing? That is continuous with the outer layer of cells of the hair follicle. The more internal layers of the hair follicle are continuous with and fairly synonymous with the spinosal layer, and on and on. So that the actual plates, and you can see them here, the plates of keratinocytes that make up the hair, they're the same plates that make up our stratum corneum. They're just dead keratinocytes. It's simply that the portion of the hair that is sticking up out of the skin are more densely compacted and organized into this round structure that we call the hair. Okay, do you see that? All right, so let's go back now and look at the three zones of the hair. And when we talk about a hair, we're really talking about the shaft. The shaft of the hair is that sticks off the surface, out of the surface of the skin. But the shaft also continues into the follicle, but they've chosen to name that part of the shaft the root of the hair. The root of the hair is a continuation of the shaft below the skin. until we get to the very bottom where we have this rounded, enlarged portion. And I know we've all done this experiment, right? Whether you've done it purposefully or you've done it accidentally, you pluck out a hair. And when you look at the end of that hair, you see that little round, often white, little bead, little ball on the end. That is our hair bulb. And the hair bulb is going to consist of a projection from the dermis. And they're calling this the hair papillae. We'll go back and look at it in the picture as well. But you know how we have the epidermal papillae and the dermal papillae projecting up like this? Well, in the hair bulb itself, there's going to be a dermal papillae projecting up into the base of the hair bulb. And that's what we're talking about here, where blood vessels and nerves enter and leave. Well, we're only going to have sensory nerves leaving, but you've got arteries going to and veins moving away. And so that connection is in the hair papillae. The cells that make up and surround the papillae are going to be the hair matrix cells, and these are going to be synonymous again with the basal and some of those mitotically active keratinocytes of the spinosum. These are the cells that are continuing to divide. They're continuing to push the cells not upward, but towards the middle. And as you're pushing cells from basal to spinosum, we don't use those terms, but trying to keep you in mind with the epidermis, we get to the point where we got stratum corneum. And instead of the cells at the surface being able to just detach and float away, now those dead cells have a very confined space inside the hair follicle. And as more and more cells get added, it's like a trash compactor. Those dead plates of keratinocytes are getting squeezed into this round mold. Again, almost like a pasta press. And as they get squeezed into this mold, more and more get added, the hair grows longer and longer, and it projects outward. And so the confined space within which you can pack these squams, these dead cells, leads to the hair being stronger and more coarser than what we might see the cells on the surface of our skin. Did we get all this written down? You got that? All right. Now, we're going to do the same thing with nails here. There's a couple of more things to write, but let's look at the picture first before we start writing, okay? Is that all right? We're pretty familiar with fingernails and toenails. This is the most highly compacted of our dead keratinocytes. And when we look at our nail, we're going to start sort of an external gross anatomical look. What we're looking at here is the body of the nail. You can also consider this body of the nail plate. I kind of don't like how they use these different terminologies. It looks like two different things. But the nail plate are these dead keratinocytes stacked up. And they're labeling it here sort of in cross-section versus here looking at it from the surface. And when you look at the body of the nail, we're going to have a proximal end. And what does proximal mean? Closer to the body, especially when we're referring to our arms and legs. And this is going to be the distal portion, or they refer to it as the free edge of the nails, that cliff that's hanging over. And then we have our lateral nail folds where the nail appears to disappear underneath the skin, and that's the rounded part of our nail. Now, where we have the hardened nail plate, which again is synonymous with our stratum corneum, beneath we're going to have the other layers of our epidermis, and that's referred to as the nail bed. The nail plate, dead cells, no nuclei, highly compacted. The nail bed, that's going to be our basically stratum granulosum, spinosum, and basal. Until we get to the most proximal part of the nail where it disappears under our epidermis, that's going to be the nail root. Do you see how they keep those terms? The root of the hair is beneath the skin. the root of the nail is beneath the skin. And the epidermis underneath the nail root, that is where we're going to have our mitotically active cells that are adding to the nail and pushing it toward the edge. Okay? Let me go back here. All right, so there's our nail plate, the dead keratinocytes, the nail bed, the active living epidermis underneath, and then where we add cells to the plate, that's going to be our nail matrix, which is just beneath the nail root, the first part of those dead compacted keratinocytes. And we got the proximal nail fold, right? It's this proximal edge where the nail disappears underneath the skin. Lateral folds on the side, the proximal fold underneath the base of the nail. We need Jeopardy music playing. Or some Eagles or something. Yes, sir?
Does the nail, since it's attached here, does it detach and move, or what does it grow out?
So how does the nail grow out? Well, essentially, you can think of the nail bed as almost like a conveyor belt because it's attached. Have you ever lifted up your nail accidentally? Yeah, that is no fun at all. So it is attached. You've got nerves, you've got blood vessels, it's your skin. So it's almost like a conveyor belt. As these dead cells are pushed upward and forward, those attachments kind of go along with it until you get to the free edge where you lose the attachment of the nail plate to the underlying bed.
So the under grows with the nail?
Yeah. Just like we see with our skin, it's like every 30 days. It's turning over, it's doing the same. I mean, it really is synonymous except for how densely it is packed together. Now, some other terms and locations that we didn't mention in that slide. We all know what the cuticle is, right? Your cuticle is that skin that hangs over the proximal nail fold. It's that thing that you spend a lot of time pushing back and cutting off and all that. Unless you're a guy and then we just bite it off or ignore it altogether, right? The big fancy name for the cuticle is the eponychium, or eponychium. I like to say eponychium. Nychium means nail. And so what does epi as a prefix mean? Above or on top. And so your cuticle is on top of the nail plate. Now let's go to the other end of the nail. Underneath that edge of your nail, this is where everything collects, right? And I don't know why. I can try as hard as I can. But if I'm working outside, or especially if I'm working on my car, I am going to get dirt and grease up under that sucker. I don't care if I have gloves on or not. It's like a dirt magnet. That space underneath the edge of your nail, under is the key. That is referred to as the hyponychium. Hypo meaning below the nail. Do not confuse hyponychium, below the nail. Don't confuse that with the nail bed. Because where's the nail bed? Beneath the nail plate. All right? So the hyponychium is just that space under that free edge of the nail. Now, I always wondered this growing up. And I really do not know the purpose of this thing, or if it has one. But I can only see mine on my thumbs. Look at your nails. You know that little moon that kind of pokes up? Do you have them on your other nails? Yeah, I've just got little bits of mine. Maybe I'm getting old and the moon is setting. I don't know. I hope not. But that's the lunula. You see how they got that name, right? Luna meaning moon. It just looks like two little moons peeking up. So that's this white crescent-shaped structure. I think, and maybe if my food nutrition folks in here can help me, I think that has a little bit to do with maybe your diet. I know that sometimes you can get ridges or waves on your nails as they grow. That means there's some kind of problem with your nutrition that's going on. Now, if you've got little bitty teeny ridges, don't freak out, okay? These are pretty serious, very noticeable things that can happen to your nails, and it's usually one of the first signs that your nutrition is not what it needs to be. Like hair growth too.
Like if you don't drink a lot of water, they say that's what it is.
If you don't drink enough water.
Or like iron deficiency.
Oh man, I need to drink more water. Is my moon setting because I'm not drinking enough water?
No, like, do you ever get like the little white little things? Not like.
Oh, those little white dots?
Yes.
I thought those were bruises. Again, I'm not a nail specialist here. Too much what? Dairy. Man, my fingernails should be white. I drink milk all the time. So, but again, nail health and what you see on your nails, I think relates to nutrition, hydrated state. I mean, clearly none of us drink enough water. About the only water I get is in my coffee, but I need more than that. Okay, so with our integument, we said one of the big functions was protection, and we talked about immune protection. It's our first line defense against pathogens. But our skin is also designed to protect us against stresses, trauma, and damage. Now, how many musicians do we have in here that play the guitar? We got any guitar players in here? All right, we got one. Man, we got one in the front and one in the back. So I got to give you mad respect, sir and ma'am, because I'm a wimp. I tried playing the guitar for about 2 minutes, and my fingers hurt so bad. I've heard the whole no pain, no gain thing. I put the guitar down and picked up iTunes. That's sort of my music. Now, sir, in the back, how long did it take you with the guitar before your fingers stopped hurting? A month? So you hurt yourself for a month just to play the guitar. You're not right. You realize that, right? A month. I can't think of anything that I would suffer through for a month. Yeah, calluses from working out. Notice I don't have calluses. No, I don't. About the only calluses I have left are from when I was a teenager and I had to rake leaves. And you begged for calluses when you had to rake leaves. The other reason you begged for calluses growing up in a small country town was if you had to dig post holes. Anybody else have to dig post holes? Man, I'm telling you, they could cut the crime rate down to nothing if instead of putting you in jail or the death penalty, they made you dig post holes. That is the worst form of punishment. That's unconstitutional, I think. But the point of raking, digging post holes, playing the guitars, your body is designed such that when you have repeated stressors on your skin, the cells beneath that area are going to increase their mitotic activity. They're going to replicate more. Your skin is going to thicken, and that's going to protect you from damage from the stress that you are either too determined to stop or you're not smart enough to stop. I'll let you be the judge of which. It depends on what you're doing. The raking, I was just not authoritative enough to tell my dad I wasn't going to rake because I liked eating and having electricity. But what do we call those increases in your skin? Calluses. Calluses are there to protect you from this repeated stress. Now, while you may not have calloused fingertips from playing the guitar, I have a feeling we've all damaged our skin in some way and at some point. Now also tell me if you're like me. I would almost rather cut my finger by slamming it in a door more than I would take a paper cut. Anybody else? No. No? Give me a piece of paper. Where's a piece of paper? I hate getting a paper cut. I mean, I get a paper cut and it's almost called 911. I mean, it is awful. It hurts so bad. But the good thing is, with our cuts, regardless of how you get them, your skin can repair itself. And if the cut is fairly small, you can regrow the same tissue, the same cells. And often, if you will leave the scab alone, you scab pickers, and just let it heal and naturally fall off, in a couple of weeks, you can't even tell there was any damage at all. But if the damage is widespread enough, if the lesion is wide enough, those cells can't interact with one another enough to regrow, and so you fill that gap with connective tissue. Did y'all get fibroblasts in lab? Deposits collagen, lays down tissue. You've got to seal the breach to keep pathogens out. And if it's too big to seal it with your normal tissue, you're going to form a what? Scar, which basically is collagenous connective tissue. It's going to look very different than what you see with your epidermis. Now, in a normal regenerative process, we're going to go through a couple of fairly common steps. You get a cut. You bleed. Do you bleed forever? No, thank goodness. One of the first beginnings of the repair process is you have a blood clot. Now, in 239, when you get to circulatory system, you're going to spend a lot of time discussing all the plasma proteins involved in forming a blood clot. But that's going to create a plug. And this plug is going to be where we start to see our white blood cells, particularly macrophages, come in and begin to remove the clotted material, remove the damaged, dead, or dying cells so that they can then be replaced. And what first is being replaced is a special form of connective tissue called granulation tissue. This is not your typical collagenous collagen scar tissue, but it's more of a vascular type of connective tissue left over still from the blood clot with fibroblasts beginning to move in. But this is going to allow the blood vessels to begin to regrow, your normal cells begin to regrow, and this granulation tissue is going to be a bridge with which those normal cells can further contact each other and fill in that gap. And finally, once we get our cells growing and together, we completely seal it off, and after the scab falls off, which is the remnants of our blood clot, then we've got normal, healthy stratum corneum underneath. Now, how long might it take for that process to happen? This is a analytical question, one that we sort of have to wrap our brain around based on other information we have about our cells and how fast they undergo mitosis. How long might that expect? It would be at least how long? 30 days. Remember, it takes 30 days from a cell to form to get to the top. That's the life cycle of a cell. So depending on how big the original cut was, it's going to take at least 30 days to get those new cells just formed at the basal up to the top. So it's not a fast process. That's why you scab pickers stop picking off the scab. It's almost like you know who I'm talking about, right? Are you a scab picker? You're laughing back there. Are you a scab picker? Why do you do that? Do y'all just not like looking at them? I want to leave mine. Put a Band-Aid on it so you can't see it. Because whenever you do that, guess what? How many of you have picked scabs and it started bleeding again? Guess what? You start the timetable over again. Because you got to form a clot and a granulation tissue. So, yeah, leave those scabs alone. They're there for a reason. Now, many of you are going to be in direct patient interactions. And many of you are going to be involved in emergency room medicine, or you may in fact be in a burn ward. But if you haven't discovered this already, when your family and friends find out you're going to be a nurse, what are they going to do? Hey, what do you think this is? Hey, I've got this. What do you think it is? So you need to be full of information to help them. Otherwise, just say Google it. Okay. Burns. You're going to encounter burns. And you've heard of first degree, second degree, third degree. This sort of category of burns depends on the depth with which you've caused damage. First, meaning you've involved the epidermis. Second, the epidermis and part of the dermis. Third degree, which is the worst, and I think you can imagine why now, you've involved all of the epidermis, all of the dermis, and some of the hypodermis. So you have involved your entire depth of your skin and the connective tissue beneath the skin. Now, first degree, it's like sunburn. Cool water, you grab the hot pan, ice, that'll sort of take care of the numbing that you can do to relieve the pain. Second degree, we're going to have this blistering, and now I think you can see we're really damaging to these deeper layers. A big risk we have here is infection. So you're going to have more extensive treatment if you have second degree type of burns. But third degree, you got to go to the hospital. You've got to go to the hospital. And like most injuries, when you have considerable dead tissue, you've got to remove that dead tissue so healthy tissue can regrow. And the removal of the skin that was destroyed with the burn is called debridement. Now, when you remove the dead skin, what's underneath? Nothing. Connective tissue. Hopefully some of your hypodermis is left. Now, depending on the severity of skin, there may be muscle underneath. So, you really have a risk of infection now. And more than likely, that individual is going to have a skin graft. Either cadaver skin graft or a graft from some other place in their body. But here's the thing. When you do this much damage, and we could see this on the previous slide, when you have to regrow so much tissue, you do not regrow hair follicles. You don't regrow sweat glands, sebaceous glands, nerve endings. You don't regrow them. So a skin graft, or the skin that may somehow repair itself, it's epidermis only. You're not, keratinocytes only. You're not going to regrow other structures, and certainly you're not going to regrow your sensory organs. So that part of your skin is going to be numb. So this is going to take a lot of treatment. And especially for infection, you're going to have extensive scarring because that's really all that's left. And in addition to all that, these people are going to need a lot of counseling, psychological counseling, especially when you look at some of our military veterans returning and they're burned on their face. If you have burns on your body, you can sort of cover that up. But if you have these severe burns on your face, because your face is your identity. And nurses, since you've got this direct patient contact, you do understand it's going to be much more than just a prescription in medicine and an IV for what you do. So these patients are going to need a lot of love if you're dealing with them. Well, now if we regrow skin in these places, possibly third degree with a skin graft, if the skin attaches and survives, it's going to be just like the skin where you took the graft from. You're not going to have the sensation though, because the nerves are not going to regrow back into that area.
So why is it that sometimes in the burn unit, like if it's a really bad burn, they'll sit there and take off the skin?
Well, that's the debridement. Because a lot of times with dead tissue, substances are released from those dead cells that kill the healthy cells next to them. So these necrotic cells, and that's what that is, necrotic tissue, dead tissue. It's removed so it doesn't do more damage to the other cells, to allow the cells then that are now exposed to try to regrow. If you didn't have a skin graft, then that's going to be a big scar, if you can in fact create a scar that's that big. The skin graft is principally to minimize the infection. So, it's why people scream.
Yeah, I've seen it like on TV and like.
Oh, when they're doing the debridement? Yeah, it's painful. I mean, I personally, I can't say from personal experience, but hearing from direct people that have been burned and looking at documentaries and things, burns are one of the most painful things you're going to experience. I don't wish that on anyone. Was there another question? I saw another question. Okay.
Where does skin grafts actually come from? Another part of your body or somebody else?
Well, Yes. They can come from another part of your body, or a lot of times what they're doing now are cadaver skin grafts. So they will take skin grafts from cadavers. They're also discovering that if you can take cadaver skin grafts, remove the cells, so you leave like the connective tissue in the basement membrane, and you put that on almost like an adhesive bandage, that helps your own cells begin to grow and kind of fill in. They're not going to do that for a big, huge area, but that's a new direction in which they're starting to move. Now, I'm not going to expect you to remember these names, but I do want you to appreciate the involvement of the skin in vitamin D synthesis. Under UV light, your keratinocytes are going to produce the beginning form of vitamin D. The beginning form then is shipped to the liver where it's processed. It's shipped to the kidneys where it's finished. And so your skin, under the direction of ultraviolet light, your liver, your kidneys, work together to make vitamin D. And why is vitamin D important? Because without vitamin D, you would not effectively absorb calcium and phosphate from your diet. Your intestines wouldn't be able to bring it in as effectively. Now, you may think, well, calcium's good, but what is calcium really good for? Well, what tissues depend on calcium? Your bones. What else? You will not contract your muscles without calcium. What else? Your nerves cannot signal without calcium. We could do this. Are you getting the picture? Everything uses calcium. So you've got to have calcium for homeostasis in your body. It's not just for your bones. Now, a couple of things before we finish up here. We talked about your skin's response to repeated exposure to ultraviolet light, right? What increases when your body and your skin's exposed to ultraviolet light? Melanocytes, melanin, melanosomes. That all increases. It's your skin trying to protect itself. But Langerhans cells decrease in number. You kill off Langerhans cells with repeated exposure to ultraviolet light. And remember, Langerhans cells are part of the immune system. They're antigen-presenting cells. So you may feel great about your new glow and look of your skin, but now your skin's more susceptible to pathogens. You're less able to protect yourself against any pathogenic attack because your skin, remember, is your first line defense. Now, again, from a cosmetic outlook, freckles. These are benign. Freckles aren't bad. I know a lot of people that have them don't like them because they don't think they look nice. But it's just hyperpigmented skin. Areas where you have more melanin than others. Again, sort of a benign tumor, if you will, or warts. These are keratinocytes that are virally infected. And the virus is a papillomavirus. How do you get rid of warts? You kill the keratinocytes that have the virus. You can either cut them off, you can burn them off, or you can freeze them off. Either way, you're removing them or you're killing them. Typically, you need to do that under the direction of a doctor. I know they have the little freeze away things and what's the little drops you put on? Anyway, there's various things you can do to kill those cells. I think some people would put an aspirin on top of the wart and then put a Band-Aid around it, the salicylic acid, that will do the same thing. It'll kill the wart, but it's going to kill the skin. Hopefully it's just in that area. Acne. This is going to be one that dermatologists typically will see. Acne is an infection of the hair follicle or the sebaceous gland that's attached to the hair follicle. And we can get into all these levels of blackheads, whiteheads, all that kind of gross stuff. If you like gross, go watch some of these YouTube videos of these people with these blackheads. I mean, they just get out buckets and buckets of this stuff. Ugh. I can't. I try to watch them, but I'm like, no, I got to stop. And you think, how do people let that go? How do people let it go that long? You know? I mean, freckles, right? We're not going to worry about freckles. I mean, freckles are cute. You ladies that have freckles, guys like freckles. Don't do that. But what I sit and I wonder about, now I'm from a town of 2,000 people. I'm an educated redneck. I really am, okay? And I know that some people in my hometown and in rural communities, they don't always make the best choices with their decisions on their health. But I got to go, why do you let that go? Why don't you get that fixed? You can go to Walmart pharmacy, because everybody's got a Walmart, right? You can get some stuff and get that fixed. You are going to be shocked, nurses, at people coming into your clinics, your wards, your emergency rooms, and you're going to go, how in the world do you have sense to get out of the rain? Because they have let their health go as bad as they've gone. It's crazy.
Are worse kind of like once you have them more simple? Because people I know, like, they had them and they just keep.
Well, if you've got the papilloma virus in your body, yeah, it's just a matter of when's it going to pop up again. So, yeah, just freeze the suckers off. Freezing doesn't really hurt. I've had a couple, and we've got a liquid nitrogen tank that we store. And don't tell doctors I do this. I'm practicing medicine without a license, I guess. But I'll just get some liquid nitrogen in a Q-tip, freeze the Q-tip, and for a second or two, it kind of stings, but then it's numbed and dead because it's so cold, and yeah. That's just freezing off the wart. Now, I know we can't read all of this, and I'm not expecting you to know all of this information. What I do want you to be familiar with are the three types of skin cancer that we have here. Basal cell carcinoma, squamous cell, and melanoma. As we go down this chart, we increase in severity and risk. So basal cell, which cells do you think become cancerous with basal cell carcinoma? Stratum basal. Isn't that nice that they did that for us? Named it for where the cells come from. This is the most common type of skin cancer, which is awesome because it's the least dangerous. Because rarely will basal cells become anything more than a tumor. And when I say anything more than, the cells don't spread. The word for spreading is called metastasize. So it doesn't become cancer. So that's great. Unlike squamous cell, and remember the surface layers of our skin, those are squamous cells, the squams. So where these are our basal keratinocytes, these are our keratinocytes in the stratum spinosum. This is more dangerous. These do have a higher propensity to metastasize and become cancer. And then we get to our melanocytes, melanoma. This is the most deadly because it grows the most rapidly and it's most likely to spread. Because when you think about a melanocyte, it has all those processes. It's extending the processes. It's always moving, even when it's living. When it becomes a cancer cell, now not only is it moving, but it's also dividing more rapidly, and that's why it's more aggressive and can spread more easily. Now, these are going to be new lesions you see on the skin. A melanoma is typically going to start as a mole. Not all moles will become cancer, so don't freak out if you have a mole. Everybody's got them, okay? Don't freak out. But here's the thing. When you see something different, a new lesion, a mole that looks different, changes shape, changes color, starts bleeding is another key sign. You need to get it looked at. Because the one thing all of these have in common, basal cell carcinoma treated by surgical removal of the lesion. You find it, you get it out. Cured. Squamous cell carcinoma treated by what? Early detection and surgical removal. Find it, get it out, cured. The most dangerous, melanoma. Survival rate improved by what? Early detection and surgical removal. The way you cure cancer is find it before it becomes cancer and get it out. There is nothing that you have on your body, no mark, no mole, nothing that is important enough for you to ignore it and let it become a tremendous problem that might be life-threatening. In the first hour, I said, and I said it before I really thought about what I was saying, I said, there's no mole you have that you're too attached to not. That's kind of the response I got to. You understand what I'm saying? Do not, especially in this part of the world where we have so much sun exposure, do not ignore it. If you have children, keep them out of the sun. Keep them from getting severe burns, because one of the big things here for malignant melanoma, increased risk include those who had severe sunburns, especially as children. If you were in the sun a lot as a kid, most of us that grew up in the country, we were outside all the time because we only had 3 TV channels. So, I know it's a matter of time for me. I already had a basal cell right here on the tip end of my nose. And if you want to know pain, get an injection in your nose in that cartilage. They had to deaden it before they cut it out. Yeah. Man, I started crying. Not boo-hoo crying, just tears coming down to my eyes. And I was apologizing. I was like, I'm fine. I don't know why I'm crying so bad. And the nurse said, that happens. Everyone, it's okay. I'm like, all right, well, just give me something to wipe my face with. It's pretty bad. Okay. That's our material for test 2. I just wanted to show you our new